So many topics have been covered today. We've covered a great many new ideas and thoughts that perhaps you hadn't encountered before. We're going to encounter another one with our next speaker. We also hear a lot about fake news. All you have to do is turn on the television, and you are bombarded by fake news. There are a few people out there who are still the truth sayers, and our next speaker is one of them. This young man has been a blogger for about the last 20 years, and he knows how to take the information and give it to us in a very, very straight manner. I want you all to join me in welcoming Steve McDonald to the stage now. Thank you.
Ten years. It's okay. I know I look young. I would have started when I was like 15 or so. I have a prop. So, I have a plaque. The plastic bag challenge. All right. If we had a full democracy at the federal level, America would be a place where a smattering of blue urban areas could outvote the majority of the country to elect the nation's leadership. We'd have Democrat presidents in perpetuity who appoint liberal cabinets, activist judges, and empower a deep state willing to spy on its citizens, publicly destroy political opponents, sending swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. They would convert the nation from a land of natural negative rights protected by a constitution to one of positive rights handed out to supporters, none of whom would ever wear one of these. Some people in the room are going, oh, I know who he is now. I always have a hat on. The Encyclopedia Britannica online describes, intentionally or not, the problem of full or direct democracy. Quote, no association could maintain a democratic government for very long if a majority believed that some other form of government were better. Any student of history knows that the word better belongs in scare quotes. In the case of the American experiment, from very early on in our nation, someone understood that liberty and individual rights would not last very long if a government formed to protect those rights became a thing where a simple majority could be convinced, coerced, or propagandized into believing that some other form of government were better. We've got an entire political party in America whose greatest priority is to turn our constitutional republic into something they are selling as better, and that's a full democracy. They've been patiently working on this transition for a very long time, but they've recently gotten a lot less patient and a lot less tolerant. Nowhere is this more evident than on college campuses, places where for decades liberal educators and administrators have instilled intolerance cloaked as diversity. Entire curriculum and degree programs exist to grow future generations of voters, community leaders, and even judges who believe some other form of government is better. And an important part of this education includes making future generations comfortable with the idea of controlling speech. Not just pressuring others to keep silent or compelling speech, but open acceptance of force as a necessary tool to keep uncomfortable words or topics from damaging sensitive ears and delicate minds. Every week, dozens of new stories appear on sites like Campus Reform, The College Fix, Legal Insurrection, about delicate liberal snowflakes being triggered by one imagined offense or another, alongside reports of protests against conservative speakers and the educational institutions who use these antics to actively suppress speech. I actually had a side thought when I was writing this, and Southern New Hampshire University isn't mentioned in here because this is all about UNH and their bias-free language guide, but I had a thought that Snowflakes at Southern New Hampshire University must henceforth be called snowflakes. So write that down, we're going to call them snowflakes. Deep breath. Albert J. Nock, in Our Enemy the State, writes, "The state, both in its genesis and by its primary intention, is not based on the idea of natural rights, but on the idea that the individual has no rights except those that the state may provisionally grant him. It has always made justice costly and difficult to access and has invariably held itself above justice and common morality whenever it could advantage itself by doing so. American colleges and universities are attacking free speech as a proxy of the state, an effort that is well underway even right here in New Hampshire. A few years ago, the University of New Hampshire made national news with the discovery of its bias-free language guide, a tool to help the kiddies bring about the left's new world order. The ideas in the guide were neither new nor unique to UNH, but is an essential piece of the idea that you only have the rights the states grant you, especially the right of free speech. In its introduction, the Bias-Free Language Guide proudly states, and I quote, "This guide is meant to invite inclusive excellence in our campus community. Each step of inclusion moves us closer to a full democracy." The guide defines micro-assaults, micro-insults, and microaggressions. The Bias-Free Language Guide references proper pronouns none of you ever heard of in Schoolhouse Rock. It also provided guidance on daily language challenges related to word choices regarding various identities such as age, class, disability, convincing students that free speech is more dangerous to them than a government empowered to limit it. And while universities defend themselves from such criticism by claiming they have to follow the Constitution, Republicans and conservatives are still having their views suppressed by students who are taught to shut down and not debate those who differ with them, and by administration and faculty willing to use tax dollars, at least at publicly funded universities, to defend that culture in court cases they frequently lose, but that never force any real change. Something Greg Lukianoff and Adam Goldstein call speech code hokey pokey. Quote, "Adding in the time it takes for an appeal, even a student with the questionable good luck to have his rights violated on the very first day of classes is unlikely to maintain his student status all the way through to an appellate review. Once they're no longer a student, they may not have standing in court. Rights suppressed without consequence, the college continues or returns to business as usual, to inclusive excellence, to advancing full democracy." Last month, President Trump issued an executive order that directs 12 grant-making agencies to use their authority in coordination with the White House Office of Management and Budget to ensure institutions that receive federal research or education grants promote free speech and free inquiry. Some states have likewise banned speech zones, speech guides, and are looking to tying public funding to efforts to protect the First Amendment on campus. But how do we know? How do we know if they're truly promoting free speech and free inquiry? For many years, the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, often referred to as FIRE, has been fighting for free speech rights on college campuses. But in 2018, FIRE awarded UNH a green light for speech. The green light means UNH appears to be saying and doing all the right things. But as I've just outlined, their administrative and educational goals tell us they are still actively working to undermine the Republic, and they're okay with promoting the idea that free speech and free association are the tools of oppressors. Yes, Mr. Trump's plan, 2 minutes, I gotta talk faster. Mr. Trump's plan to pull on the purse strings is heading us in the right direction, but without a basis for measuring the deeper threat, there's nothing to prevent what happened at UNH. UNH removed the bias-free learning guide, but they left the machinery behind, well-oiled and well-fueled. It is a pattern repeated all across America. For liberty to trump socialism on college campuses, we need more than a temporary threat against funding or a few high-profile legal victories. We need to educate and support future generations willing to confront these threats, who will advocate not just for our Republican government, but for everything that made America great in the first place. There are organizations involved in this fight at the college level. The aforementioned FIRE continues to do great work to fight for free speech, religious liberty, and due process rights on campus. Even the ACLU has been good on campus speech. The Alliance for Defending Freedom's Center for Academic Freedom has and continues to step up to defend students forced to fight for their rights in court. but we need to do more. Many of the leaders in this room or their groups support or defend education choice, which in my mind is by far our best possible insurance. President Reagan said, and we haven't had a Reagan quote for like an hour, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." You've heard this one already. I shortened it. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. If you didn't believe him then, please believe him now, because while we have not lost the fight, we appear to be losing ground. And while the Supreme Court continues to be with us on free speech, history has also shown us that you can't count on 9 elected lawyers for everything, nor should you. Thank you.
Crop TV.